guess. But I grew up on Jefferson Street, and this community was a very diverse community. It was kind of like a community within a community,
Sure.
a little town within a town, and it evolved. It wasn't a planned community. It actually evolved out of necessity. We had Jim Crow laws, so it was a very rich community, rich in diversity, and I don't mean racial diversity, but in socioeconomic diversity. Of course, we lost a lot of that when the interstate came through, and it destroyed many of the homes, and of course, it cut off a lot of access also to the businesses that existed on Jefferson Street. So, and I'm happy to see that we are getting some attention now, especially from groups like yourself.
Talk a little bit about the community, what it means to you, your role in the community, your work in the community.
As a council member, I'm working with community members, community organizations, churches, etc., to make sure that their voice is heard for their Nashville. Nashville is ever-changing every day. Nashville has a very unique soul. We're known as Music City. Probably about 70% of the music that you hear on the radio is recorded right here in Nashville. And so when we think about the history and the soul of Music City, that soul plays a big role here in North Nashville. The things that we can do is drive economic development for the people that are here, increase the education opportunities, and increase the job opportunities. Those are the things that I fight for every day as a council member, and those are things that I'm asking everyone to help us with. So if we can have better education for our kids and our youth, we can have more job opportunities for people that necessarily can't go far away to get to work with the transportation needs, that can come to work right in the community that they live in, will help us increase the accessibility to so much more for the families here.
The more I try to connect this back to Juneteenth and the way North Nashville looks now, I think about how my ancestors dreamt of freedom, and they dreamt of freedom for for generations to come, and we're not really benefiting from that dream. We're not living up to it. I have to think about my grandfather who grew up in this neighborhood also. I have to think about my great-grandfather who was a sharecropper. I have to think about my great-great-great-great-grandfather who was still a slave, who was waiting to be emancipated. I would like to not speak for my entire community. I would like to have true conversations. I want elected officials, new corporations, new organizations to just come and speak to neighbors, understand what it is that we feel like we've been missing. And then, of course, investment is always helpful. Investment of time, resources, or talent. So is it that the Nashville Soccer Club can come and support our babies by engaging with them as mentors or coaching them, or just working with them, being around them? It could be a little bit of anything, but I think time, talent, and treasure and conversations will go a long way for us.
What do you
Okay. Hello, can you guys all hear me very well? Okay. My name is Jalil Nibaba. First and foremost, would just like to say hello and welcome to all of you individuals who took time out of your day to be here with us on a very special day for myself personally, and most importantly for me, I think, the entire club of Nashville SC. For us, we take Black History Month very, very seriously. And of course, me being a member of the Black community, it's very important to see a crowd of people who are very diverse. And I think what sports have always meant to me is simply the opportunity, an equal opportunity, to show yourself and your community how good of a person you could be. That to me is what sports and the ability to be part of a sport in a community really means. Of course, we like to measure wins and who is at the top of the table in X, Y, and Z, but at the end of the day, sports have the ability to transcend all social barriers, and simply, like I said, gives each and every one of us an equal level playing field to show our communities who we truly are as people. And we often see that sports do have a unique ability to allow each and everybody in the community to really make change, transcend barriers, transcend maybe political, racial, sexual orientation barriers in ways that, quite frankly, other aspects of our communities that we find ourselves in don't have the power to do. So for that, I'm very honored and thankful to be here with each and every one of you guys, representing, most importantly, myself. I think oftentimes as an individual of a minority community, you heard in the recording that we did there in 2020, Ms. Burgess, she talked about not wanting to have to represent the entire Black community. And I think when we zero things down and really look at what it means to be a part of a diverse community, it means to be highlighted and elevated for who you are as a single person. So to be able to represent just myself, Jalil Nibaba, and my own experiences, that's something that's very dear and near and important to me. So with that said, you guys are going to be able to hear each and every one of these individual stories and what their experiences mean to them on an individual basis, because they are individual people with their own unique experiences. And I hope you guys very much enjoy that. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to you guys Derek Young, AKA DY.
Well, good evening. Good evening. We're very glad you all are with us tonight. As you can see, this is the Nashville SC Black History Month discussion panel. I grew up in St. Louis, which in the 70s and 80s was often called the soccer capital of America. I didn't play soccer, but I've been a fan since I was 12 years old. And I moved to Nashville 33 years ago and have had the great privilege of working in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion that entire time. I was really excited when I saw NSC was coming to life, and I'm a season ticket holder. And I want to say, Shaq, CJ, that's me yelling second row by the 18-yard box, but that's another conversation. Well, y'all, tonight, I think we have a great opportunity to hear, as you heard him present, some really honest perspectives from people who are in the middle of this topic. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a panel discussion, and then toward the end, we're going to open it up for questions. And in a panel discussion, we always want to try to be as succinct as possible because everybody's got great ideas, everybody's got great perspectives. So to start off, I'm going to start here in the end with Shaq, and we're going to have each panelist introduce themselves and give you sort of one real great takeaway based on this notion that we can leverage sports, all sports, to make a more positive impact on the community. Shaq?
You guys can hear me, right? Okay. How you guys doing? I'm Shaq. Obviously, I play for Nashville Soccer Club, and yeah, I just want to say that the game brings us away in mysterious ways. Obviously, there's a a lot of different backgrounds, different ethnicity, different sexual orientations, as Jalil said, and I think the beautiful game just helps us all bring everyone together, whether that's in games and bars, whether that's in stores, wherever. When you guys have a common interest in a game, I think it's a beautiful thing to bring everything else together and accept everyone for who they are. So I think that's important, how it brings the game together.
Hi, my name is Maya Antoine. I'm a senior at Vanderbilt, and I play on the Vanderbilt women's soccer team. I actually have some previous experience with the Canadian junior national team, and from that, basically, I can leverage my position, or we can leverage our position via grassroots soccer, and this is really important to me because I grew up from the age of 3, kicking the ball around with my shins because it was still way too big and wearing jerseys that were down to my ankles. So I really think that starting very young with grassroots programs is really important for this mission.
I'm David Ewing. I'm a rear Nashville native, a Nashville historian and tour guide, and I tell the story of Nashville. And Nashville SC is a huge part of the story of Nashville in the last 10 or 15 years. Growing up here, you would have never thought we would have had any professional sports, and now we have 3. We were always the largest city in America, television market, without a professional sports team, and through great local leadership, we have people. But one of the things I'm really excited about, and I know DY might bring it up, is Nashville SC has a friend of mine who is a minority owner, Marcus Whitney, a black man is one of the owners of Nashville SC, and I don't think any of the other professional teams here in town have a person of color who's part of the ownership group. And so when you think about that kind of hashtag that Nashville SC has called everyone in, it goes all the way to the top, and I'm really excited about that.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ashford Hughes Sr. I serve as the Executive Officer for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion within Metro Nashville Public Schools. I also co-chair our local My Brother's Keeper Network, which is focused on providing access and opportunities to young black and brown boys. What I hope to leave here with today, or something I hope to leave here with today, is that sports plays an important role with our young people outside of just the entertainment, but also doubling down on the education needed to be successful along the line of sports, but that also sports and those individuals that make it to professional sports in soccer and whatever do have a community responsibility to stand up for things in the community, to make their voices heard, so that kids and community can partake in all that is proper and necessary within our society.
Hi everyone, my name is Zulfat Swara. I'm a councilwoman at large with Metro Nashville government, which means I represent all of Nashville and Davidson County. In my day job, I'm a CPA. I'm the Executive Director of Grants and Contracts for Meharry Medical College. I'm also one of the founding members of Nashville SC Mixtape Supporters Club. And when I think about my role and my journey, I've always felt like when people get to know each other, we can break down all the differences that we have, this us and them thing. And the more you get to know people, the better you can have a unity and understanding. So sports can actually play that role. It's a community building tool that can create a bond between a father and a son, a neighbor, a fan and a supporter. And so we need to use sport as that. And so my takeaway is that if we can expand the access and the reach of sports, then we can do that. Access in terms of who can come to the game, who is able to see the game, and reach in terms of how are we reaching the community, what is the sports team doing inside every community. And I think if we can get the access and reach right, then we can use that as a great tool to build a very powerful and united community.
Good day, I'm Desmond Armstrong. I'm a former national team player. I was born and raised in the DMV, Washington, D.C. area, just to make sure. And I'm excited to actually have a professional soccer team here in my native city of Nashville. I've been here for about 12 years, 11 years. And so one of the biggest things for me was based off of my experience of going around the world through the use of soccer and seeing other cultures and opening my mind to a broader worldview. I wanted to bring that same experience back to other individuals, primarily in the African American community, which I started some 20 years ago. And so here in Nashville, started a youth soccer organization called Heroes Soccer Club. And our intent is to use soccer as a sport to open up the eyes and give opportunity to kids who can come together from different cultures and who can speak the same language, that being soccer, on the soccer field. And so our intent with our organization, and mine in particular, is again, to open up the doors of opportunity for kids through the advent of sport, in particular soccer.
How we doing? How we doing? CJ Sapong here, forward for Nashville SC, also representing DMV, and my boy Desmond. I want to thank the panelists for those insights, because it's very good for someone in my position, being a member of this community, having to go through many different hurdles and obstacles to get where I am today, and ultimately feel comfortable hearing people in their relative channels focusing on different aspects of our community. It's a spark, you know, it's motivation, it's inspiration, so thank you for that. As far as me and my feelings of how sport can be a vehicle for effectuating the change that we're all speaking about up here, is exactly this. You know, that Nashville logo that has, you know, remnants of a culture surrounding it is essentially what has, you know, given you all the interest to show up here today. And by you showing up and, like Zolfat said, hearing our stories, getting to know us a little bit on a deeper level, this is how we start to break all the predispositions that essentially society has just programmed us with, right? We're just in a position now where it's being exposed and we're able to speak about it. And that in itself is very empowering for me. I know for a lot of members of my community as well. And I'm very excited for this panel, but also just what the future holds.
Outstanding. So for me, y'all, a couple things I want to elevate from what I heard. First is that it struck me with what Shaq said, is that we're at a point now where we sort of expect athletes at every level to be leaders in the community. That's something we expect now, and hats off to you all for stepping up in that way. It struck me that Maya said she started playing. Anybody catch that? I started kicking the ball at the age of 3, right? And I see one young gentleman here in the audience, and I think you all, another youngster here in the audience, y'all, the more we can help young people see the benefits of sports, not just the big money, not just the fame and fortune, I think that's massive. And then David talked about this notion that there are African Americans who are part of what NSC is. So how do we make the Marcus Whitney's examples, that this is available to all of us? Ashford talked about this notion that we got to make sure we see the breadth of education and how education cuts across all sectors, especially here in sports. And then the thing, Zolfat, you said that really resonated with me is relationships. I was sharing this earlier with Jaleel. One of my heroes is Ambassador Andrew Young. I met him a number of years ago when he came to speak at the Bone Law breakfast. And I'm going to recommend this to everybody. If there's a person you really admire, get the question you want to ask them in your mind way in advance so you don't fanboy when you meet them, if you know what I'm saying. So I met Ambassador Young, and I said, Ambassador Young, out of all the things you all did, what would you say was the most significant element of the civil rights movement? He said, you know, that's a great question. No one's ever asked me that. He said, but if I had to give an answer, it would be the relationship MLK developed with LBJ. So much in life happens through relationships. So I'm glad you said that. You know, Desmond and I, we found her the same age. He played in St. Louis where I lived. And I love what he said. We can use soccer as a same language to leverage how we get young people to see the whole wide world. I love that. And then with CJ, again, what struck me here, out of everything you said, CJ, is this notion that we've got to create more opportunities to make more people feel comfortable. Yo, there are people who walk around our streets every day and have no idea that our society has been designed for them in such a way that everywhere they go, they feel comfortable. So I love that you said that. So I'm going to start off with you, David. Nashville has an extensive list of athletes who contributed to sports history, obviously especially black athletes. So as we celebrate Black History Month, what do you see as some of the notable contributions of those Nashville black athletes?
Thank you. We had a Negro League team that started here in 1920 called the Nashville Elite Giants, and later that team moved to Baltimore, but it gave professional African Americans a place to play when baseball was not integrated. But two of my favorite kind of athletes of all time happened to be from Nashville. One was Wilma Rudolph, who was on the track and field team at TSU, part of the famous Tigervells, and she won 3 gold medals at the Rome Olympics in 1960. You talk about relationships, Derek. There was a boxer by the name of Muhammad Ali from Louisville, Kentucky, up the road, and he would come down to hang out on Jefferson Street at TSU a lot. And the reason he did, he met those same Tigerbells at the 1960 Olympics. So he was good friends with Wilma Rudolph and Coach Temple and all the people that competed because they were all representing the United States. The other athlete that I like that is not a household name, unfortunately, even here in Nashville, is Ted Rhodes. Ted Rhodes was the first professional African-American golfer, and he competed in PGA tournaments until they figured he would send his application in the mail, and then he'd show up, and it's like, wait a minute, we don't want you here, which unfortunately, and this is the bad legacy of golf, the whole tournament system, an invitational tournament versus an open, happened because of Ted Rhodes. Tournaments became invitationals to exclude African Americans. Ted Rhodes was posthumously given a membership in the PGA about 12 years ago. But when Tiger Woods, before he put on the green jacket in 1997 when he won the Masters, he mentioned 3 African American golfers that made it possible for him to be standing where he was in that tournament. And the first was Ted Rhodes and Calvin Pete and Lee Elder. Tiger knew his history. We have a golf course named after Ted Rhodes. Ted Rhodes, unfortunately, did not make a lot of money playing golf because back then it wasn't as lucrative. And then when he retired, there were no pro-ams for him or autographs to sign or things like that. But that's the contribution of Nashville in professional sports.
You know, David, you are a treasure to the city. If you could recommend a resource where our audience, the people who we're live streaming with, a resource people could access to learn some of that rich history, any suggestions there?
We have a wonderful resource here, just a few blocks from here, called the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame. And they honor athletes of all genders and races, and it's a wonderful place to see who's from here and the contributions that they made to sports. There's people in there from Pat Summitt to Tracy Calkins, who won an Olympic medal in swimming, and of course, African-American athletes too. And so the history of sports is constantly being written. It's a museum in person, but you could also go and look online and see some really just Tennessee greats of all levels.
That's awesome. How many of you watched any of the World Cup? How many of you watched the World Cup? Yeah, I was obviously pulling for Team USA, and my second round team was England, and then my boy Harry Kane just hurt my feelings, but that's a whole nother story. So, y'all, I want you to think about this. In the history of soccer, in the history of the World Cup, we have 2 people before us, both African American, who've played in the World Cup. So I'm going to open this up to both Shaq and Desmond. Obviously, the world is still buzzing from the World Cup. What are your thoughts on Nashville as a soccer city? Shaq, I'll start with you and then Desmond.
Yeah, Nashville soccer has definitely arrived here in Nashville. You know, obviously, you know, it was buzzing during the World Cup. I remember seeing, you know, videos of fans just showing, you know, a lot of love. And when me and Walker came on, you know, it was great. And also, you know, the game just last week or this weekend when the U.S. played, you know, it was sold out. So I think it definitely arrived to Nashville. You know, they accepted us, they accepted the game, and I'm really, really thankful for it, for sure.
Just to add to Shaq, I thought that the World Cup was tremendous in regards to the exposure of the sport being broadcast all over the world, but for every game in the World Cup, we were able to watch it. I'm so old that, you know, when the World Cup was first broadcast back in the day when I played, the only time that they broadcast the World Cup was when the USA actually played, and as soon as the USA got knocked out of the competition, there was no more broadcasting outside of the semifinals and the finals. So as it pertains to your question, Nashville, I think, is a perfect location and city to exemplify the diversity of the sport of soccer. I think that the communities that exist here in Nashville show the growth of this city. It also shows the direction of the future of this city relative to so many different cultures that exist here, and that all of those communities can come together, especially at the Nashville Soccer Club. Games, they're there. It's not sectioned off in regards to the Hispanic community or the white community or the black community or the Muslim community. Everybody's side by side cheering for one victor, and that is Nashville Soccer Club. So I think it's a great template for what soccer can do for a city, and I think it's a great example of what Nashville is becoming and will become in the future.
You know, Desmond, when you made that last statement, it reminded me of a different sport in a different city. But I went a number of years ago to a UT football game with my brother-in-law. And we were sitting right next to 2 white gentlemen, and we really didn't say much to each other during the game until UT scored that first touchdown. We were hugging and high-fiving, right? But that's what I feel in your response, right? There is that universality that we're all people here. We all have the same love. So let's take that a little step further. So to Maya and CJ, for you all, soccer obviously was a part of your life very early. But even though the game is globally a phenom, over 1 billion people watch the World Cup, in America, it still seems to be sort of a suburban, rural sport for young people who are white, Caucasian. What are your thoughts on that? Where do we go with that? How do we address that? Start with Maya, then CJ.
Well, personally, I did not grow up here in the States. I grew up in Canada, and it's a lot different. Playing there, most of my friends, or basically everyone in my community, played soccer up until high school. Even if you weren't all that great at it, or even if you didn't like it all that much, you still played it because that's what everyone else did as well. And a huge part of that is because not only did everyone else play soccer, you also had that massive community engagement from our club teams. We had a local rivalry between my community and the town next over, and people would show up for these games, and there's like 12-year-old girls playing, and it didn't matter that they were 12-year-old girls. You had parents screaming their heads off on the sidelines because it was more than just watching your daughter play. It was, you had this actual rivalry going on with the town next over, and after the game is done, everyone's fine and dandy, but in that moment, you still have that community connection, and you're willing to do whatever you can in order to pull out that win. And I feel like that is a really big difference between here in the US and there back in Canada, is that you don't have as much as such a close community connection between the club and the players playing. It's a lot more, you have to travel to go play with that club, or you have to drive like really, really far in order to play at a certain level. And that causes a lot of like disconnect between the community and players themselves, yeah.
And what I hear you saying at some level is, if you really want to expand the game, you got to take the game to the people,
yes.
right? So often it's, let's bring the people to us. And going back to what you said earlier, CJ, about that comfortability factor, now I'm out of my neighborhood. Now I'm in an area I don't know. Now I'm around people I've never been around. So I think that's an awesome point. CJ?
First of all, thank you for that breakdown. I never knew, just, right across the border that soccer was something that was accepted in communities and brought communities together. My experience was very different. I was the token, and if it wasn't for my parents being African from Ghana, I wouldn't have connected with soccer the way I did. I played basketball, I played football. These were things in the neighborhood. Guys that look like me, they're looking at the LeBron James, they're looking, at the Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes, and I guess it speaks volumes to the way we expose sport in this country, right? There's 4 other sports that are always going to be broadcast before soccer. So, for us to continue to grow the game, I mean, we're doing it here in Nashville at a grassroots level, but the youth in those communities need to see a Shaq Moore, running on the field in a World Cup, and I tell him, by the way, he's my roommate, great roommate, listens to all my problems, provides good feedback. But yeah, like when I saw my man running on the field, I just couldn't help but think about all the little black boys and girls, right, that are seeing somebody that looks like them, on a global stage. And what I think there's a lot of opportunity because having soccer be such a global game, accepting of different cultures and ethnicities, this is an opportunity for us as a country to begin to change the way we go about, the building of our relationships and the acceptance of people that are a little different than us.
That is so rich. And let me say this, you all, as we all know, if you have grown up in America, many times our media makes a lot of their revenue by showing us the worst of people, and especially the worst of young people. And I just want to say to Maya, you are handling your business right now, and I'm just very proud of you. Ashford.
So I want to jump in from a father's perspective and give, so Sunday is the championship match was going on. Now, I don't know if it was just my algorithms when we talk about the excitement of soccer, but I know from the start of the match to the penalty kicks, when I checked Twitter, it seemed like everybody in Nashville was following what Messi and everybody was doing, so there was excitement around that. I have a 10-year-old, started playing soccer last year. He plays at Frederick Douglass Park, and he started to play because his friends wanted to play. Now, he's doing more grass watching and bird watching than he is actually trying to kick the ball and score, but he enjoys it, and he's learning with friends. So I think in a school district that has 149 different languages spoken, 42 different countries of origin, we see that soccer, for a lot of our students that are coming to our city to go to school here, soccer is their first sport. So whether it's recess, whether it's different soccer clubs starting in the southeast, the southwest, and Donaldson where we live, it is starting to become more ingrained and a part of the community, where my son and his friends get together. And my introduction as a African-American male, early 40s, was through soccer, was through PlayStation 3 on FIFA World Cup.
There you go.
Now, we showed out on it, but there was no soccer fields really in Knoxville, Tennessee. There was either UT football or you played basketball. Right. But now my son and his friends have massive opportunities. Our next door neighbor plays for Donaldson Academy, right? So they're being exposed more and more, and I think Nashville Soccer Club, I've been to 2 games, exciting, right? You're right there on the field, it's exciting. I don't really know too much of the ins and outs of the actual rules, but it's exciting to watch. And as I learn more, I'm teaching my son, let's not focus so much on the grass. Let's focus on kicking and striking and being able to play defense so you can get better.
One of my favorite recent soccer stories involving African Americans happened unexpectedly. I was given a tour to a group of out-of-towners at Fisk University. My mother went to school with Diane Nash and John Lewis on that campus, and outside of the library, which is now the president's office, there's a field, and there were 12 African American men, Fisk students, playing soccer. There was a goal up, and I was like, and they had swag in Fisk soccer. I was like, how long have you had soccer? Right. And they have a club sport. And I talked to many of the students, and that was the last thing I expected to see at Fisk University. I shouldn't have been surprised. It's the first HBCU to have a gymnastics team, that there would be a group of people playing soccer. But what that said to me is there's a different new generation of people that soccer is an exciting game. And even though it's not a varsity sport at Fisk, they were playing it for the love of the game.
The library closed in 20 minutes. We have books, other materials that need to be checked out, or if you need a reference for library card, please make your way to the service desk on the first floor. Thank you.
I want to go back to something CJ said, and then Zolfat, I want to ask you a question. Y'all, somebody asked me once, I was speaking at an event, and it was a Q&A, and they said, Mr. Young, you had a background, you grew up in the largest housing project in St. Louis, you didn't have a father, blah, blah, blah. What was key to your success? I said, if I had to tell you, most people tend to kind of need their role models to look like them. I wish it weren't that way, but that's how sort of most people are. I said, you might not believe this, but my role model growing up was Mr. Brady from the Brady Bunch. Even I knew it was a fictitious story, I know all fiction is based on reality. And I thought, if this dude could have 3 kids, marry a woman with 3 kids, have a maid and a dog, and never lose his temper, what? Where I'm going with that is, I think we've got to do our best to keep driving the you look like me role model, but we need to drive the breadth of role models as well as we think about how we get young people involved. You know, Zolfat, I've been knowing you for a while, and I know you are all about action, and I know you are all about access. Talk to us about some of your thoughts on how do we increase access, especially for our young people in Metro.
Thank you. Before I go to that question, I've got to put my own soccer story in there. And as they're making reference to kids from around the world, as someone growing up in Nigeria, I was that kid on the street with my brothers playing soccer barefooted. That's what we did when we were young. We were the one talking about, Maradona and Socrates and Dr. Armstrong and all of them. Those were the people that Pele came to Nigeria to be commercial when I was growing up. So it's always been like that. And so when I came to town, I knew that we're having a soccer team. It was one of the best things. And it's one of the reasons why we started the Mixtape Soccer Supporters Club, as a way to make sure that we expand that access and that reach. We talked about reach a little while ago. When we actually did the kickoff, or when we inaugurated the Mixtape team, we actually did it in North Nashville. We had a viewing party on the grass in North Nashville, with people in North Nashville actually watching soccer and dancing. You have to put the Black culture in there. The Mixtape name came from Black culture, and we wanted to make sure that it's Black-led, it looks like us, but we want to show the world what soccer looks like. So that's what the reach and going into the community looks like. In terms of access, when you go to the sports game, I'm a season ticket holder, right? And you look at the supporters section, and you see the Black people all around, and my son was a capo for the game. I mean, it was just so beautiful. And so when families bring their kids, or even those that are watching it on TV, and they see that this is a game that is celebrated by everybody, I think it's something that is very beautiful. So we need to keep our focus on community building through the sports. We need to make sure that the sports team are investing in our community. So not just go to the community to play, but how do we make sure that that playground in North Nashville is not just rocks and sands? How do we make sure that they have grass on it? And then while we're playing soccer, why are we not talking to them about the education that my dear friend Ashford was talking about? And so that's what we need to do. We need to use sports to empower them, to encourage them, to be their mentors, and then, again, have them to come and watch the sport. Let them know they can play too. Let them know that they can be a part of it. That's what I would like to see happen, more reach, more access. You talk about your friend, somebody sitting beside you. Same happened to me at the soccer game. The guy that has the season ticket next to me was a white guy. We didn't speak at first, but when they scored that goal, it was like, we'll jump up, we'll high five, and Soccer Moses come in, and we all lose it. That's how it is. I'll give one more example. During the last Muslim holiday, we had Ramadan. We had a big fest downtown Centennial Park. And I actually, Instagram page, I talked to Annie and said, would you show up and see if you can just come? He came, and he was there juggling the ball, and you need to see the kids on the field. They were so excited just to see somebody like them among them. So that's what we need to do more, and I think that the team, the players, and us as a community can help with that.
I want to go to you, Ashford, with somewhat the same question. You have come to Nashville. You have literally become just a jewel of a person who is all about addressing what needs to be fixed. That's just you at the core. In your role here in the city, how do you see that notion of access being a real thing and not just something that sounds like a nice thing to talk about?
Well, with access, we always talk about intentionality, how we've been intentional about going and achieving the things that we say we value. I'm a big believer, if we say we value, how does that show up in our budget from Metro Council? How does that show up in our budget from schools? And how does that show up in the actions that we do? And I will give the Nashville Soccer Club 1,000% credit where it's due. And when they talk about being involved in the community, actions in the schools, they have shown it with the partnership with My Brother's Keeper Network, coming to read with young boys in schools, inviting opportunities out for students to come and participate at different events, and not doing it as a one-off, right, but being consistent in their approach to doing that, right? So when students see consistency and people coming out there, man, I can do this. Why can't I be that, right? And the important thing that I also see is with sports, telling our young boys and young girls that not only can you play on the field, but let's also talk about the back of the house work that's going on too. The CEO positions, the other things that help the sports thrive, right? That we don't always see on the field, but this is access to get you to understand there are other job and career opportunities in this space outside of only playing. hey, if your goal is to play, that's great. But if you can't play, everybody can't be Michael Jordan. But there will always be an executive, and I tell young people all the time, so hear me now. You think the soccer players make good checks? You think the football players make good checks? The person that makes the good check is the man that writes the check and that signs the check. That's the individual that you want to be because they have tremendous amounts of access that it may not be on a TikTok video, but they are crafting the opportunities for the individuals you see playing to have this great profession. So I think in Nashville, we have to continue to be consistent in how we show up and engage community differently that isn't a one-off, but a chance to really build community. And I think coming out of COVID-19, I think that now is the time that people want to be back in community.
That's good.
And I think that soccer, right, is a global sport. We think of here, we love football and basketball, but it is a Americanized sport. Like soccer is global. Never would I imagine when Messi got home that he couldn't even get to his house. He had to fly a helicopter because there were millions of people like in front of his house, and it wasn't like drama. It was like out of love, right? So just expressing how do we share and pass on that love as a community with this organization to bring more people in. We only have soccer in Metro Public Schools, not at every school, right? So how do we begin to have, from elementary school, how do we begin to have clubs there? How do we begin to have teams in middle school that then are ready and prepared to transition to high school? Here in Metro schools, we often don't always have the best competition against Williamson County and other districts because they have clubs starting in elementary school on up to high school. So by the time they're in high school, they've been playing together for 10 years in school, right? So that gives them a little bit of a competitive advantage. So we talk about how do we get soccer in more of our schools early.
I just wanted to add, and I was going to say this, there's a young man that coaches tennis and soccer in one of the high schools in Nashville, but they don't even have a place to play. They have to go to the community park. And he sometimes had to put the kids in his car to take them to where they need to play. And so when we're thinking about access, that's the thing that we're talking about. And so MMPS budget, when we look, and we have to start looking at, it does not only have to be 3 main sports or 2 main sports. There's so many sports that the kids are interested in and want to play, and how do we expand that? I think that's going to be very critical on the government and financing side, as well as community partnership, to make sure that we are exposing them. So I wanted to put that in there.
Great point. I'm going to ask this of my 4 soccer players here. Obviously, athletes are using their platform for all sorts of things, social justice in particular. Starting on that end with CJ, then Desmond, then Maya, then Shaq. I'd love to hear from each of you on things you're doing, things you've seen that it would be really helpful for us to know about.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to it, like Zolfat was kind of explaining, it just takes action. I think we're in a day and age where it's trendy to show to the world that you're representing a community or you're promoting these things. That goes a long way, don't get me wrong, but until you, and I guess this segues into the things that I do. I'm a founder of a nonprofit based in Philadelphia, tackling nutrient deficiencies in underserved areas. And I, through utilizing agriculture to maximize my health, learned about the systemic issues that were going on in these communities. And it's like, once you see that, yes, you can show and promote, but until you go and get your hands dirty with those kids and you talk to them, you understand their motivations for, you know, why they're showing up or, you know, the adversity that they're faced with, ultimately that's what it's gonna take. And, you know, another organization I'm a part of, me and my homie over here, Jaleel, were founding board members of Black Players for Change, which is an initiative of all the Black players in MLS. We came together wanting to bridge that gap of racial inequality in sport, but also in society. And again, once we got our anger out and our frustration out, we realize, okay, this has been set up for a long time. This is a systemic issue. So again, it circles back to all of us sitting here right now having this conversation. It's because we're in a time where it is being exposed, we're talking about it, but the next step is the action.
That's good. You know, as I'm listening to you all today, when I was growing up, I'm not going to guess how old anybody in here is, but when I was growing up, there was a term we used to use and the term was dumb jock. And the term was referencing those people who were athletically awesome but intellectually weak. And I am just fired up about what I'm seeing and hearing all day today, because you all are the total opposite of that and demonstrating the need to be holistic as athletes. So I just wanted to point that out. Desmond, talk to us.
Yes, in my time when I played for the national team and played in the World Cup, I was writing for USA Today, doing a diary. And my last diary entry dealt with trying to expose the sport of soccer to all sectors of our community in the United States from a cultural context, not just in the suburbs, but take the sport to the urban areas, myself and my roommate, Jimmy Banks. And so Jimmy was able to establish his own soccer club in Milwaukee, known as the Simbas. And for myself, I went to several different states, cities, Baltimore, Atlanta, LA, and Charlotte, North Carolina. So what I'm doing today in regards to getting your hands dirty here in Nashville is I would go into Antioch and I would introduce the sport or say that I played soccer, recruit the kids into a team, and then start taking the team over to Douglas Park, where they had the league that existed as a recreation league, and built out a soccer club. From that, the participants that I had were mostly immigrants or refugees that were in the communities. I went to 5 different apartment complexes, pulled the kids, and then traveled over across town to East Nashville to play. And those same individuals started to get into middle school and high school. And so they called me to be a high school coach. So I coached over at Stratford for 2 years and took that team that competed against all the teams in Williamson County all the way to the state championship and lost in the semifinals. From there, I coached over at Fisk University in terms of getting your hands dirty. So I was there for 3 years, recruiting kids in and also trying to transition the kids from high school into Fisk University to utilize their giftings in soccer to establish or acquire a soccer scholarship, similar to what I did as a player. And so beyond that, in terms of getting your hands dirty, have engaged the community over in East Nashville and to expand to North Nashville and back into Antioch to give the kids an opportunity to participate, give them access, and to walk with them through their education process as well. Some of my kids have now moved over to a charter school in STEM prep and are positioned to graduate, and again, to use the sport as a tool to acquire potentially a college scholarship and to further themselves. So that's what we're doing, and we are talking about access in regards to in the neighborhood. A lot of our kids played in their apartment complexes because what you find is that, especially with immigrant and refugee families, that the parents are working, double shifts. Mother works right after the father comes home from the, graveyard shift, and the older brothers and sisters take care of the younger brothers and sisters, and they can not leave the community, but they have to stay there, and so the sport was soccer. And so what we want to do is recruit those kids into an opportunity to play against the other kids that participate in the suburbs, give them an opportunity to, again, get greater exposure and have access, and to carry themselves as far as they can. One of my visions has been, look, if it weren't for my folks having moved out of Southeast DC, I would never have encountered soccer. That's the truth. I started late. I didn't start when I was 3 years old. I didn't have that opportunity. I started when I was 12.
Right.
Okay, and by God's grace, I was able to make it to the national team and then travel the world. And that travel was a part of my education. And so I became curious. And so access, thus then exposure, provides kids an opportunity to ask questions and then to dream. And that's what getting your hands dirty really means. Not to sit here and just talk about, not that we are doing that, I'm saying not to just do that, but then to really connect with all of those other opportunities that take us beyond the sport itself, beyond the field, and then take them into the areas behind the scenes, as you were discussing, that they can then dream about doing. And that's the biggest thing about having sport as a tool to then take our kids further, to speak on ownership. That's what we're talking about, ownership. Not just participation, but ownership. To own a club, to own a small business, to own a team. And then we can start to address some of the other things in regards to that transition from player to what? To coach, to general manager, to sporting director, to owner of a team.
That's awesome. You know, Desmond, in the short time we've spent here, you don't strike me as a guy who does any of this for fame, attention, a pat on the back, but I want to give you a pat on the back. You would be amazed how many conversations I've had with people at barbershops. Of course, everybody knows all the world's problems are handled at barbershops. We know that. And people wax on, so poetic and so passionate, but they won't do what you have consistently done. They won't go directly to the child. They won't go directly to the school. They won't go directly to the neighborhood. So as somebody who's done that since I was 14 years old, much love to you for that. Maya, Shaq, talk to us about this notion how you all as athletes are using, can use your platform to make positive change happen.
For me personally, most of my impact has been on a very local level. So when I go back home, I go play at my club team, and I'll actually go and talk to like the U12 girls teams or the U8 girls teams, which makes me extremely uncomfortable because I don't like talking in front of large groups particularly. But to me, it was more important for them at that point in time to understand that the sport that they're playing means more than just playing the sport. It has to do with, yes, you are a female athlete, and that is something that is very hard to do, believe it or not. A lot of people don't take women's soccer very seriously, much less being an athlete and a female. They don't really take that very seriously. And that was like very important, especially as I've been playing, that young women understand that yes, you are an athlete, that is important. And with the sport of soccer, not only do you, even if you don't continue playing and get a college degree from it, or go play collegiate soccer, or even play at a higher level of soccer, you create unbreakable bonds with those people that you play with. I cannot tell you how many people that I've met with the sport. I have friends that I would have never met because of the sport itself. And that aspect of it, I have friends who are on the Canadian national team, and they've started a mentorship program where they actually reach out with aspiring soccer players, young female soccer players, and they actually do one-on-one mentorship or group mentorship programs to encourage them to keep pushing through, to keep playing that sport that they love, because even if they don't get the same media attention, even if people think that it is quite literally a joke when it's not, it is people's lives. And I think that that aspect of it, especially with young females in the Black community, in any community of minority, like taking ownership of that, like, yes, I am a female, I am an athlete, and yes, I am awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, for me, I think it's just about being present, you know, obviously in your community. I know for me personally, I like to just show my face around, you know, people that look like me or people that don't look like me, you know. I run a camp every year in Trinidad, you know, in the Caribbean, and those when you see the kids' faces when they look at you, when they smile at you, when you give them your boots or your cleats is, it's really humbling, So just being present, being there for them, talking with them. I also try to do a camp in my native Florida, where I was born. So I try to do that as well. And actually, had a day that was honored for me because all the accomplishments and the stuff that I do there too. So I think the most important thing is just be present. I'm working with Desmond and his program to kind of try to get a camp together for the kids here as well in Nashville. And I think that's really important. So yeah, just for people that look like me, people who don't look like me, just know that they have someone to kind of look up to. I know, growing up, it was the guys we looked up to, like CJ said, was kind of the basketball players or the football players, and there was very few on the U.S. national team at that time, or who were actually important players at that time, So I think just seeing people that look like you is a big deal. So I try to be as present and talk to them and feel them, and knowing that I was in your shoes too, and you can make it as well.
Awesome.
I want to continue about what you said about young people, and thank you to the young people that are here in the audience. I think we have half the audience is young people, elementary school students, middle school students, and high school students. You all are our future, our players, our fans, and we appreciate you being here, because soccer will even get more popular because you think it's popular and you spread it with your friends and you play and you tell your parents to take you to soccer games, and you have birthday parties there. That's what it's all about. I grew up in a city that didn't have soccer professionally, and so you're growing up in a much better environment, more entertainment choices, and it's exciting, this global sport. So to the young people here, thank you for what you do, and thank you for what you will do, and we are honored at your presence. I know you're probably here for some autographs too, and maybe some pictures. We got some really big deal players here, maybe not here for us, but the folks around us, yes, so thank you.
Really appreciate you doing that. Go ahead, Ash.
Real quick, I think it's something important to say, and I wish this phrase came from somebody that was like stuck out. He was a great human being, but it's from Spider-Man, right, and Uncle Ben. With great
Did
power,
you say Spider-Man wasn't a great human being?
I mean, I'm an Incredible Hulk Black Panther
Okay,
fan,
there it is.
so,
There's the truth. All right, come on.
But with great power comes great responsibility, right? And as we were talking about wanting and needing to be engaged and boots on the ground, sometimes there's a reality that that's not everybody's role, right? So the importance of showing up and having a voice and using the platform, but utilizing it with accurate information, understanding what you're really trying to convey is really important. And when you talk about engaging young people, I'll tell you, with my two boys and with some of the young boys that we work with now, it's not always about the X's and the O's. Sometimes it's just showing up and being like, hey, man, let's just talk. Let's just create a sense of belonging to you that they may not always feel that way, right? So showing up in that way. But utilizing as an athlete, we have a long history of athletes, particularly in the African-American community, of using the platform for social justice change, right? Now, whenever you put yourself in that predicament, sometimes there is a cost to pay for it, right? But throughout history, whether it's Joe Louis, right, who really galvanized the country against Max Smerling, and how do we come behind this gentleman, whether it's Bill Russell and Jim Brown and those Muhammad Ali that put together a summit in Cleveland to really attest the Vietnam War, whether it's more recently, Colin Kaepernick, who paid the ultimate price, his career in football, to stand up for something that he believed in. You have to be willing to use accurate information, work with people who will mentor you in getting the right information out there, so you utilize your platform in a positive manner that can be most impactful for everybody. We know that if you help, and there's a theme called interest convergence. Whenever you help some of the lowest members of the community, it really spawns out and helps everybody. But athletes, and I think Nashville Soccer is doing a great job now of cultivating these young men now. How do we get them in front of the David Ewings, the council members, sorors, so we can say, how do we give you the correct information, and how do we help build your efficacies in what's going on in the community, so you can really build your platform for justice and change, particularly with our young people. right? We know that young people right now coming out of COVID-19 are facing a lot of social, emotional issues. How do we utilize that space to come in and create a sense of belonging in our communities for our young people, while at the same time, and I'm gonna beat this dead horse until it's gone, reading. How are we making certain that we are really presenting reading as a foundational tool for liberation, for growth for our communities? And I think the platform that Nashville Soccer Club has right now can really champion that moving forward.
That's awesome. I want y'all to think about this last question, and while you're thinking about it, I'm going to offer a few thoughts, and then after they all respond to the last question, we're going to open it up to you all. That last question is, we are seeing leaders, political leaders, business leaders, who are using their platform to say, we don't want our country to learn about the history of people who are African American or black. We don't want those stories told. So I'm going to ask each of you, I'm going to start on this end with you, Shaq, and go down to CJ, to just share a thought on that. So while you're collecting that thought, a couple of things I want to share with all of us. I'm a semantics person. I'm into what do words mean. And there's a phrase we use a lot that I really wish if I could change it. We use the term racial inequality. And I really hate that term because the races are already equal. It's not that the races are, it's we're not giving people equal opportunity. We're not giving people equal access. That's the semantics things for me, because over time you almost wind up planning in your mind that maybe the races aren't equal. So that's just a thing for me to say, to think about. Another thing that strikes me today is the power that each one of us in this room has to go out and do something. Some of you know Michael Jackson from different vantage points. Michael Jackson, that was the first concert I went to at Kiel Auditorium, 1974, Confunction and the Jackson 5. Just Google that for my younger friends. But Michael Jackson has a song called Man in the Mirror. And it's my favorite Michael Jackson song. And what I love about that song is he's sort of saying, hey, quit spending all your time talking about what this person is doing or isn't doing. Use some of that energy for things other than putting down the next person, and look in the mirror and ask yourself, what can I do in my home, in my neighborhood, in my school? And that's sort of what I'm hearing as a very resounding message from all our panelists. These are people from Canada, from the West Coast, the East Coast, who have said to themselves, no matter what I look like or no matter what the society says about people who look like me, I'm going to use my talent, my time to focus on something where I can have a positive impact. I am standing here today, 58 years old, no dad, housing project. I could read at 4 because my mother used to read 8 books every 2 weeks. Reading has sent me all around the country. Reading has put me shoulder to shoulder with phenomenal people. So I want to echo that concept of reading. And then the last thought, and then Shaq, I'm going to turn to you. As I look out in the audience, I don't know anybody here in the audience, but I just want you to really understand how significant it is. David already said it, that you took your Tuesday evening and decided, I want to hear what NSC, what athletes are doing to positively impact the community. I want to show up for that. I want to be a part of that. So as I look at each one of you in this room, I want to tell you that whatever you have as a vision or a goal, not only focus on it, but focus on people who believe you can do it. Right? Shaq, talk to us. What are your thoughts on how we're seeing people who are coming against the notion of even teaching and sharing the rich history of African American people?
Yeah, first of all, I just think, it has to be continue to be spoken about. Obviously to advance as a society and grow as a society, you got to know, first of all, where you come from. You got to keep it relevant. Obviously, you got to have those uncomfortable, conversations that, maybe you're not too proud of, but I think, the more you shed light on it, the more you educate people about it, young people about it, even older people, if they can, share their experiences. I know some of the guys on the panel, I've talked to Desmond personally, and hearing his story just in general was just wild, So I think, the more that we can keep it going, keep it relevant, not just, a hashtag or Black Lives Matter or a black screen. I think, the more we can, keep it relevant, talk about it, be about it, I think that'll only grow our society.
Shaq, does it get tiring sometimes? Do you get, Shaq, there are days I wish I had like just an FAQ board on me, right? The frequently asked questions of a brother. And then just, question 4, there's the answer. Do you ever just get tired of always having to stand up? And did you get tired of it?
Yeah, sometimes I do, honestly. But, I think it's good because you educate people, most of all, especially coming from the World Cup, like that was a big stage where you can kind of open that stage to keep that conversation going on a bigger scale. So, sometimes it's a bit tiring having to, explain yourself, but, I take it with a grain of salt. I take it as, you're educating people at the end of the day, you're enlightening people at the end of the day, and I think that can only help the cause.
Oh, I think similar to Shaq, education is a huge thing. And to me, my team ended up actually talking about this during the year 2020, and what was the biggest difference was a matter of education. And when you break down that barrier of the ignorance, and when people are educated from a younger age, it makes those conversations less uncomfortable. Like, it's so much easier to talk about those harder things because everybody already has that pre-base knowledge from it. And if everyone's learning the same thing, then there isn't any wild discrepancies between what I know and what somebody else knows in a different state, because we all have been educated on the same thing from a very, very early age. And I think as you get older, it becomes very, very difficult and extremely awkward to have those harder conversations. And honestly, when you're younger, you tend to take things very literal, and if you can basically dumb it down as much as you can or simplify it as much as you can to kids so that they can understand exactly what's going on, then it makes everything so much easier as they get older, as they grow up, and they experience different things, and they meet people who have very different experiences in comparison to their own.
I don't know if this is what you were saying, but I tell you what I took from it is that if you keep limiting the facts, you actually make it harder when people wind up having to face the facts. That's what I took away from what you said, right?
Yeah.
Our former governor, Lamar Alexander, was good friends with Alex Haley, who wrote Roots and the autobiography of Malcolm X. And Lamar would often say, quoting Alex Haley, "Find the good and praise it." And that's what we need to do as Nashvillians, as Americans. And we should tell everyone's story. We should tell everyone's history. We're sitting in this wonderful library, and there's books on every kind of subject or people upstairs. And they're not saying we don't want these kind of books here because we're not teaching that subject. So you could read a book on Elvis Presley. You could read a book on B.B. King right upstairs. And so we need to celebrate all of the history of our city. And we've got some great history here. So if you don't celebrate Black history or tell the story of African Americans in this city, you're excluding Oprah Winfrey and Wilma Rudolph and John Lewis. It's a long list of people who had great contributions here in Nashville. So we should all speak up to say, I want to tell your story, but I want you to hear my story too.
I had a conversation with someone recently about this topic, and the person said, well, if we aren't going to tell the history of those persons, how about we just remove everything they contributed away from society? And imagine what our society would look like. And we could start tonight and end up next year listing all those great contributions of Black people in particular. Ashford.
Man, so I think unfortunately the reality is racism and bigotry isn't only an American thing. So I think about the players on Team France that had to go through bigotry after they lost and the racial slurs that they went through. I think of the England team. Many of those players that during the game there were language around monkey and other derogatory language utilized for those players. I think here in America, right? I think when you're a person that stands for the empowerment of black people, brown people, poor people, I think you will get tired sometimes, right? But I think history has shown us, right, you gotta rest and then get back at it, right? Because when we stop is when it continues to just roll us over. All that being said, I think for me personally, while I see this happening nationally at different systems, I think of what system do I control and that I can continue to maneuver and make certain that history and lived identity is there for our children. So my first system is my 2 children, right? So we read often and all the time, right? And they know that they're gonna read. So in between Roblox, in between Dog Man, in between Captain Underpants, we're gonna read some black history, we're gonna read American history, we're gonna read about farming, we're gonna read about all different things that we may not get in school, but they will, from me, get a full plethora of understanding of their own self-identity, because that's how they're gonna find their belonging in this world. And I think that's why we have organizations like My Brother's Keeper and other organizations that can read and give that education to students, right, and to young people along the way. Many of our programs, we have Hispanic young boys in our programs, we have some young white men in our programs, and everybody's gonna learn everyone's history. And we're definitely gonna teach black history, Hispanic history, not from the lens of oppression all the time either, but from a lens of affirmation, right? So I think it is up to us to find the systems that we control to continue to teach the true and living history. And there's 1,000 books. There's multiple bookstores. Now, I try to go to a Kibalon bookstore. But let me tell you, when it comes to the kids section books, man, I have to be honest, we go to Parnassus because their book selection for kids, diverse, is just amazing, right? From soccer books, right? They can see them faces, but I teach my children what I want to read because that is a system that I control in my household, and they want more of it. So much to the fact that my son is writing to his school. He goes to a local Montessori school that is a district school, and it's not as diverse as it could be, but some of his friends are diverse, and they wrote a story for Black History. Hey, I love that we have a lot of inclusion in our school building, but I would really like if we could read more books on Black history, right? And he said that and wrote that as a 4th grader, right? And I encourage him to have your voice spoken about what you would like. So we know the politics of it, but they can't control the politics within my home and in my community as we have organizations that we operate within.
That's outstanding. So fat.
Black history is black excellence. And I think that black history is not just something we talk about in Black History Month, but that we talk about all the time. Part of knowing who you are is having that base knowledge. The confidence that you have from knowing the stock that you come from, I cannot even describe it. I know that I come from kings and queens. And I know that I come from inventors. I know that I've come to people that build this country. I know the story of my ancestors. I know the story of Diane Nash and John Lewis and people that chewed and desegregated this out. I've seen it, I've read it, I've lived it. And that's what we have to keep doing. When we're talking to our children about finding their place, they cannot if they don't have confidence in themselves. And a good way to have confidence in yourself is to know who you are. That's what that history is. I'll give you a very good example. I was just telling the story to Jalil just before we start. 2 years ago, I did a legislation to rename Fifth Avenue after Congressman John Lewis, after he passed away. What moved me about John Lewis' story was that he was just a student along with his peers when they did the sittings, and they helped change the world. And we wanted to honor him to show his ties to Nashville. That street naming, what is sparked, was that when Reverend James Lawson came to do the opening, there were people that did not know about Lawson. But some of the people that saw him that day fell in love with what he did, read his story, that we now have a high school in Bellevue that is now James Lawson High School. Now, a couple of weeks ago, there is a proposal, hopefully it's dead, that is fixing to rename part of John Lewis Way. My 18-year-old was with me when we did the renaming. We went to Troy, Alabama. The Lewis family invited us to their home. He saw where he grew up, learned about him. And when he heard about that bill, she was outraged. To the point that this 18-year-old girl managed to organize a rally this last Saturday, did the flyer, mobilized the community, spoke about it, brought people and talked about it. That's where we have to keep teaching it. Our children have to know where they come from. Now, when people push and say don't teach it in schools, we need to fight back. But like Ashford said, even what we cannot control in the classroom, we have to talk to our children. Nobody can teach your kids better than you. You have to teach them at home. What you put into them yourself is very critical. So I say we need to keep teaching it. I can tell you who my role models are. And I mean, I'm sitting here with superstars and stuff. I need to take pictures and take to my kids and say, look who I met today. I mean, World Cup players, and that's who they need to be looking up to. And that's why we have to keep telling that story.
Zolfat, when I was 9 years old in St. Louis, my mother said, we're going to go down to Port Gibson, Mississippi. That's where my mother, grandmother, great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather are from. And then prior to that, Richmond, Virginia, and prior to that, Ghana. That's my line. So here I am. I leave the Blue Mire Projects. We take that road down to Port Gibson. I don't know how many of y'all have heard the popping of those rocks on those tires on those country roads, but and you know how when you're 9, something looks like it's as big as the White House, but it's probably as big as that table. You know how that goes? Well, we rolled up on my great-grandfather's farm. What's the big deal? Great-grandfather having a farm. My grandmother said, your great-grandfather had this farm in the 1930s. Now, I don't know if that meant anything to y'all in the audience, but for a black man to have his own farm, and say it with me, Port Gibson, Mississippi in the 30s, my chest still sticks out to this day because that let me know who I came from, right? That's why we need that history, right? Desmond.
Yeah, to echo what has been said here, my situation was that I was in very good public education in the DMV and Montgomery County, Howard County, all the way through high school, graduated and went to University of Maryland, where I took, for the first time, African studies, African American studies. And I didn't know these writers. I had never read their books. James Baldwin, Richard Wright, Zora Neale Hurston, and fell in love with the fact that we were contributing, but I didn't know about it, with the best education of a public school system. So I think it's imperative for us to continue to talk about the contributions that we have made, that we have been at the table, that we are a part of American history, not just Black American history. That's very important. For my own family, we have 7 kids. We took it upon ourselves in our household to homeschool, in which we made an intentional decision to educate our kids from a context of telling our story. And I tell my kids quite often that if we don't tell our story, then they'll tell stories about you. It's quite important for us to show our kids that society, we've been a part of all societies. We're a part of the human race. And so being a part of the human race means that we have contributed to history. And again, not just Black History Month, not just Black history, but history. And so I think it's imperative that not only for ourselves and our community, but for society itself broadly, that we have an understanding that we're at the table together, that we have contributed, that we can then speak and see each other as equals, because we've given, as everybody else has given, to a broader society.
That's great. CJ, before you go, I think Maya has to step away. Can we give Maya a big hand, you all, for being a part of our panel? And Maya, if you'll exit that way. And Maya, I want to tell you now, trust me, even though you might not like it, you're going to be doing a lot of speaking. So just go ahead and know that. Know that. All right. CJ, give
Yeah.
us your thoughts on this very important question.
Yeah, again, just so humbled to be able to hear all this testimony up here. You know, I'm hearing bits and pieces of what, you know, my cohorts are saying. And, you know, I'm thinking about the fact that, you know, at first you hear, oh, okay, no critical race theory, we're not doing that here. And you get angry, you know, you get frustrated. You know, but when I hear all of your stories, I see there were moments in time where you adjusted, right? I grew up in a good public education system. I learned these names early on. It's not the case now. You said, you know what? I'm gonna take control of this narrative. I'm gonna homeschool my kids. You know, so that your daughter, just from learning, right, from you exposing her to these things, she took the initiative. I think that's very important for us right now. We have to be able to bridge this gap that's in between the generations right now. They learn differently, you know. Social media can be a weapon or it could be a tool. You know, Black History Month comes once a year. We flood the social media retweets here to feel a part of it, but why doesn't it just happen for the whole year? You know, why don't we just flood the social media channels with a Black inventor, a Black carpenter, a Black creator, all these different things, highlight those stories. Because eventually, whether they like it or not, and those are the non-allies, we're gonna get to critical mass. There's gonna be a tipping point. And if they still want to be isolated and, you know, don't wanna be a part of the change that's really happening all around them, then ultimately that's their choice, you know? We show our passion, we give them compassion, but we're relentless with how we do it. And I think if we can stay firm in that, ultimately we'll find ourselves in a position where we would have cultivated enough partnerships, relationships with those that want to be a part of it, that those others won't matter.
Outstanding. You all, we are right at the 6:30 time, so what I want to do two things. I first want us to give a big round of applause for all of our panelists. And I want to see if we can extend maybe 10 minutes to offer some opportunities for questions from the audience. What we'd like you to do is if you have a question, we have a microphone here to my left, your right, and we'd like you to step up. And if you want to direct it to a person, please do so. Or if you just want to make it open to the panel, you can do that as well.
Thank you for coming. Thank you. This is not a question. Just wanted to thank you all for coming to our city and giving back to it. I'm Brandon Taylor. I have the honor to sit with Councilmember Swora on the City Council, as well as a founder of the mixtape with Councilmember Swora. Thank you guys so much for your words. I got here late, but I wanted to let you know that we really care about what you do, and we listen, and there's kids and youth that are listening to you, and all that you do matters. Everyone in here matters. So thank you guys for showing up and showing out. Councilmember, thank you.
What's up? My name is Christian Jordan, and it's not a question. I just want to say y'all motivate me a lot. And I like what you said. It's not only about Black History Month. It's about everybody, you know, and I just want to say keep doing what you're doing. And y'all going to motivate a lot of people. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm proud of y'all. Thank you.
Respect, bro.
Very good. Hey, Christian, where do you go to school?
I go to Whites Creek.
Whites Creek. And what year are you out there?
I'm a junior right now.
Outstanding. Thank you. Anyone else? Question for the panel. Here we go.
This is tall. Coach Desmond, I graduated from STEM and I'm currently coaching there. And on behalf of our community, I would just like to offer a huge thank you for seeing our boys and seeing their potential, you know, being that example for them. I know that meant so much for them. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you. Outstanding. Well, you all, I just want to say thank you. Oh. Mm-hmm. What's something you can do just to the everyday average person to really make a difference? And he said it was really simple. Just meet people who are different. Step out of, basically, he said it in such a, he's very articulate, but he said it in such a way that we live in one community, but yet we're basically poles apart. And so we just, how we can come together more often like this and hold these conversations with really the best moderators there. Check us in the mail, brother. Thank you. I think what you just said is really significant, and I think NSC hosting this is a great start in that process. I shared that with Brandon from NSC earlier, and I also want to say that is the freshest swag that I have seen. We need to talk about where you got that, but that's another later conversation. Y'all listen, with the time we've had, we want to thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. I have a philosophy. It's called GPTF. And that philosophy is give people their flowers before they die. So I appreciate you all doing that, especially our younger people doing that for our panelists. So one more hand for them, and you all thank you. Have a good night.
And thank you, Derek.